Dr. Seuss's imagination had no bounds.
The Grinch means mean and selfish.
As a cactus, you're as charming.
Hideous teeth, stinky breath.
You're a bad banana.
I first discovered the Grinch in our bookshelf. I thought he looked like some sort of weird mutant chimpanzee or something.
Long before the Grinch was a TV sensation, the story was more of a bookish persuasion. With the Christmas tree up and the stockings all hung, this tale would be told by the old to the young. So break out your kazoozles and give it a cheer, for 2007 is the book's 50th year. To have the Grinch stole Christmas, we give a salute, but somebody wrote and drew pictures to boot. For his real name Ted Geisel, he just had no use. You know him much better as the good Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss was born, Theodore Geisel, in 1904 in a small town, Springfield, Massachusetts. And
No.
the main thing that I think is so interesting about Dr. Seuss is that he wasn't born Dr. Seuss. It was a long process of him finding that
No, no, no.
identity.
I think Dr. Seuss is the cat in the hat. I think Dr. Seuss is a rhymer. I think Dr. Seuss is a writer and an illustrator.
His mother, Henrietta Seuss, always wanted her son to be a doctor. That was her biggest goal. She wanted him to be Dr. Geisel. When it came time for him to publish his books, he wanted to get that doctor sound that his mother had liked. And he also used her maiden name, Seuss. When he was little...
Create something that allowed the rest of us to get inside that imagination and become and see a part of this extraordinary world.
Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant. Around the whole room he took every present.
Seuss always had the ability to connect with his own child inside, and children that read his books connect with that.
Dr. Seuss rhymes words, so he can make the book pretty funny. A thumping, a bumping, a wild, alive scratching. My egg, shouted Hornet. My egg! Why is it hatching? Oh, I love that part.
These were stories that amused him, that of course he knew that children read them and loved them.
No, no, no.
But he said, right, what seems to appeal and be amusing to you,
No.
I hope they like it.
And their shrieks, squeaks, and squeals racing round on
Minutes.
their wheels. They'll dance with gin tinglers tied onto their heels.
Seuss was always asked, where do you get your ideas? And he hated that question so much, he came up with an answer.
No, no, no.
His ideas came out of Uberglen.
No, no, no.
And that's a town
No, no, no.
outside of Switzerland, I believe, where he would go
No, no, no.
to have his cuckoo clock fixed.
No, no, no.
While the clock was being fixed, he would mingle among
No.
the townspeople, and they would give him his ideas. And you never really knew if Seuss was telling
No, no,
you
no.
or not, because
No, no, no. No, no, no. No. Minute. Minute. Happy, happy. No. 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 And 5 minutes.
Okay, I can give you 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Thanks for using your words.
Words.
Come down when you're finished.
Christmas and the antlers on his head. We can actually go back to the early 1930s and see Seuss using antlers and horns and beaks in these sculptures that he created when he was just in his 20s or 30s. So he makes these fun and funny, playful sculptures with fantastic names like the Andaluvian Grackler, the two-horned Druberhannes, the blue-green Abelard.
And it was a long process of him finding his focus in life. And he didn't really start publishing his children's books into his 30s. And The Grinch Who Stole Christmas was written when he was 53.
But for 53 years I put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how?
Seuss was the Grinch in some ways. It was part of his alter ego.
Where he lives in La Jolla looks very much like where the Grinch lived. And to get to Dr. Seuss's house, you have to take a winding road up a hill. And when you reach the top of that hill, there's this old tower. And it reminds you of the peak where the Grinch lived.
Now, the Grinch lives on Mount Crumpet. Ted's on Mount Soledad. It's got to be one and the same. He's got to be thinking, God, here comes Christmas again, and La Jolla's just going to go crazy, and all the commercialism and all the hoo-ha, and he's up there being grumpy.
Yeah, he has two sides, but the nice side is shy. I think the Grinch could be a bad person, sometimes a good person.
I think there's fun seeing the Grinch get irritated with Christmas, which we all do once in a while.
What Dr. Seuss did with the Grinch is he basically took the same format of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas and then set it on its ear. Instead of a benevolent Santa showing up all round and plump and jolly, you get this scrawny, old, shaggy misanthrope who wants to take things away from people. He's doing the exact opposite of Santa Claus. There's something wonderfully perverse about that, and I think kids really loved the idea. And the only other character we really get to know is Max, who's sort of the Grinch's silent accomplice in all this. And we get the idea from Max's woebegone expression that he'd rather not be doing this. You know, he is the Grinch's pet, so he's got to stick with him.
I think Whoville's in Alaska, because it's always snowy. I think that Whoville is in the Arctic Mountains. I think Whoville is make-believe.
The characters of the Who's, Ted liked those characters so much, he said, you know, I'm going to do another story someday, somehow, and I'm going to work those Who's into it. And not only did he work them into it, he created a town called Whoville.
Oh no, the Grinch!
The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, actually, the legend is that that was the quickest book that he ever wrote. Supposedly, he wrote that book in a week. He did have trouble with the ending, and it took him many months to come up with the right ending for the book.
He would draw or write 1,000 pages to get to 60 pages.
Then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimbley. Chimbley? A chimbley is a chimney.
Dr. Seuss worked really hard at making every word count and making every line and illustration count in his books.
He never gave up on trying to put on that piece of paper what he already saw in his head.
I love the lines he uses, and they're flowing. There's nothing stiff about his work. The world of Seuss is curved.
When I look at that artwork, it makes me want to be an adventurer. It makes me want to go into places I've never seen before. And Seuss takes us to all of those places.
The good doctor's writing bemused humanity with the style which he dubbed logical insanity. He wrote in verse called Anapesticatramere and used words like dark, sands, and jacksephator. He also used smogulus, crepulous, slop, snorkel, jaboo, zomp, romp, and yacht. He wrote about snooze, blues, non-nooks, and that. The Nadners, Daleks, and of course Ring the Gat. He took readers to places that only he knew, like Gecko and Whoville in Sala Salute.
He was coming back from a trip in the middle of the night when he couldn't sleep. The ship was tossing up and down.
The engines were grinding into his mind,
And it was the rhythm of the ship tossing up and down,
that he couldn't get out of his head.
which some say created that certain pattern of rhyme.
And he eventually wrote the book, And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street. And that was the start of it.
Say, that makes a story that no one can beat. When I say I saw it on Mulberry Street.
When Dr. Seuss's books first started coming out, people noticed that they were different.
It was different. You were listening to a very pure, unique spirit when he spoke.
But how did the Grinch end up on TV? Well, that's a good question. Just listen to me. Seuss had a friend who was exceedingly funny, who directed cartoons for Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. Let's make Grinch a cartoon, Jones often would plead, until finally one day Dr. Seuss, he agreed.
The book was made into a TV special in 1966. Chuck Jones was working at MGM at the time, and they were making it as a holiday special with Dr. Seuss's involvement.
Dr. Seuss had known the animator Chuck Jones during World War II.
They had both worked together in a unit that was doing a series of morale films for soldiers, which kind of lampooned Army life, called Private Snafu. Jones was the director of many of those shorts, and Dr. Seuss was the writer. There was one Snafu cartoon called Rumors that I believe he did a lot of design work on and contributed a lot of crazy-looking creatures, kind of like the ones over there.
And I think it was two minds of a similar kind that saw kind of offbeat way of thinking, a sideways look at things.
Seuss himself wrote the script and even expanded it in a few places. Because you're dealing with a book that can be told in a very short amount of time, and you've got about 25 minutes to fill, you're going to have to extend the length a little bit, such as when the Grinch is complaining about all the noise that the Who girls and boys are going to make from their presents, we actually see them opening their gifts, and they're running down, and they're wagging their pantumas, and they're got their snoof bloopers and pantukas, and so Jones was able to animate the kids doing all that, and you can actually see how the noise would have driven the Grinch crazy.
My favorite part is when he's like saying, noise, noise, noise.
Chuck Jones did a fantastic job of taking Seuss's two-dimensional book and taking it into a completely different medium.
The drawings are sketches, really, and when you get to animating, you have to do things like, how does the Grinch move? I mean, he's a sketch in a book. What are his gestures? Is he confident? Is he shy?
Chuck Jones was working with artists that he worked on with the original Looney Tunes team, and they were so wonderful at capturing a character's emotions just through their facial reactions and their body language. Like when the top of his little Santa hat goes like that. That's masterful. Jones was famous for doing that.
Hideous smile.
One of the best facial reactions Jones has ever drawn anywhere is when the Grinch gets his idea. Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea.
Dr. Seuss thought especially the smile looked a little bit too much like Chuck. So there were a lot of sparks that flew between two creative geniuses, but it was wonderful because it came together in a really classic story.
The Grinch finally learned when his brain gets smart that Christmas is something you keep in your heart. The children still love it, and so it appears.